Welcome to another episode of Soul Guided with Sukden. I am your host, Suki Eleuterio. I'm a visibility coach, speaker, podcast host, and creative strategist. If you've ever felt invisible, voiceless, or wonder if you're meant for something bigger in this world, you're totally in the right place. This podcast is for sensitive creatives, coaches, artists, entrepreneurs, visionaries, people who are ready to stop playing small and start trusting themselves. The people who are ready to share their work into this big, bold world, not by becoming somebody else, but by remembering who they've always been. Each week, we're going to discuss topics like self-trust, creative courage, visibility, soulful business strategies, and practical mindset shifts that will help you find your voice, own your story, and build a life and business that's deeply aligned with who you truly are. I'm so grateful you're here. Let's dive right in. On today's episode of the podcast, I'm going to talk about why I bought an expensive podcast mic and a bunch of podcast equipment, and then rarely ended up using it. Okay, so here's the truth. Back in 2019, when I started my podcast, I was a young mom living in the Virgin Islands. And as an Aries and as a self-starter and as somebody who always goes out there and makes things work or gets things started, I had the idea of starting a podcast. And I started by doing my research and looking at all the ways that I could make this podcast, but make it in the easiest way possible. I was a busy mom. I had a hectic schedule, and I knew that I wanted this to be something that was not difficult or challenging to do, because as soon as it's difficult or challenging, I don't want to do it. And that's when I found a couple of podcast platforms that allowed me to voice record on my phone directly into the platform. It is then uploaded. I add a short blurb and I put it up. All this while, all these years ago, we weren't living in the world of AI like we are today, right? There weren't as many tools available to make things even faster or even smoother or even more easy to adjust to. When I started this podcast 6 years ago, all I had to start this podcast was myself, an idea, and an app on my phone. That is literally all it took to build the podcast that I have today. What I realized something about podcasting, and I was thinking about this today with the power of your voice. Your voice is a powerful tool. If you speak the right words at the right time to the right people, you will always be heard. You will always be welcomed and received, and you can flow into a flow of abundance just with the power of your voice. And that was the little thing that I undertook on those first early days of starting this podcast. I didn't have a mission statement, a business plan. I didn't have investment. I didn't have a fancy podcast mic. I just had myself, my grit, my determination, and a little app on my phone. And all these years later, I'm 6 years into this podcast, and I'm currently driving in my car, recording into an app to share this message with you. I'm saying all this because I feel that sometimes we block ourselves from our own success by making things too challenging and too complicated. I can't do it until I buy an expensive podcast mic. I can't do it until I get that investment. I can't do it until somebody gives me permission. And what if this whole time the permission lay in your own hands, in the power of your mind, in the power of your grit and your determination, in your perseverance? Today, I was reading a book to my daughter, and I asked her, "What does perseverance mean?" She said, "I don't know." And I asked my oldest daughter, who's 10. I said, "Mishka, what does perseverance mean?" She said, "I don't know." I came to tell them, well, perseverance means that you try and you try and you try and you don't give up. So the podcast mic was never the thing stopping me from starting a podcast. Even when I started the podcast and I had now built up the listening audience, and I had started promoting it on social media, and I put it on my website, and I'm getting big speakers who want to come speak on my podcast. That's when I decided, okay, I need to go and buy a podcast mic. And when I do interviews with people to this day, I'll always use my podcast mic and we'll always sit in a professional setting and make it more official. But when I really want to speak from my heart, when I really want to activate my voice and be true to my audience, speak the words that I feel that they and I need to hear, and maybe the universe needs to hear, then I'm never going to sit in my office at my laptop with my podcast mic because it doesn't come to me. And I've tried it. And this is the reason why I'm sharing this podcast with you today, is because you've got to do it in the ways that feel best for you. You have to make it easy. You have to make it accessible. You have to make it fun. The two places that I get the best downloads from spirit to speak to you through the power of the Vishuddha, my voice, the throat chakra. The two places that comes easiest for me are when I'm driving my car, just like I did those 6 years ago with my little baby in the back, who my little baby is now, 10 years old, or I record my podcast when I'm outside, sitting in nature with my dogs sniffing the grass and a slight breeze going and the sun on my skin. Those are the places where I feel the inspiration and I feel the motivation to persevere and come and record this podcast for you. Now, I've been on a bit of a health journey the past 6 months to a year. And because of this, I took a pause on my podcast because I had to really check in with myself and get myself back to where I needed to be. And when I did that, I spent a few months, including some months in Bali, or not some months, some days in Bali. Gosh, I wish it was months in Bali. I spent some days in Bali and I really looked within. This was a time period of not external movement, but internal movement. I had to rearrange what was going on inside of me. And that took emotional healing, spiritual healing, physical healing. There was a lot of rearranging and reorganizing. And what happened was I ended up having surgery February 2026. I have this song that I'll always remember in my head that goes, "Baby, I fell asleep under the flowers for a couple of hours." That was exactly what I did. I fell asleep under the flowers in the surgery. And in that dreamscape or spot where I'm in between here and there, I received downloads from spirit that were so clear. And one of the loudest messages that kept on coming through to me over and over again was, stop it. You have to believe in yourself. Stop this low self-esteem. Stop this low self-worth. Stop this beating yourself up. Stop this allowing other people to dictate your happiness or your sense of self, and bring it back. And when I came through from that surgery, I felt rearranged on the inside, but I felt rearranged in my mind. I felt that my mind had opened up this whole new layer. And I've been able to truly see my business and myself and my life and how my life works in cycles. I work in cycles of 7. Every 7 years, I make big changes in my life, whether that's moving across the country to an island or taking on a new job or becoming an entrepreneur that's successful or whatever it is. Every 7 years, I shift. And so I'm in a new phase now. It feels really amazing. I feel so healed and so complete. And within this, I would love to invite you to step closer to me. Subscribe to my podcast if you like this podcast. Follow me on social media because I've got some things cooking. I'm not ready to deliver them to you yet because they're all in the pipeline. But I've got some things cooking that are transformational. Mainly, I want to help you tell your story. I want to help you tap into your why, into your passion, into the purpose of why you came here onto this earth. And lastly, I want you to use your voice. I'm going to help you use your voice as a catalyst and a driver to everything that you desire in this life. My name is Suki Eleuterio. This has been another episode of Soul Guided with Sukden. I am in the top 100 spiritual podcasts for women. So I'm really, really grateful for every single one of you that's been listening all these years. You've been following my journey and you've been listening in, and I appreciate you. Have a very blessed day. Subscribe to this if you like it, and we will talk more soon. Bye-bye.